Croeso, this is James, aka JP Harker, coming to you with another video. That's 3 books that I'm looking at today, and I only have physical copies of 2 of them. So, one of them is Creaduriaid Myrddyn Ddewin, which, as you've probably guessed, is a Welsh book. The K by Theodore Taylor. Oh, sorry, this is Graham Howells. And the other one is Fallen Angels by Mike Lee. That was an audiobook. I don't have a physical copy, but I have another Dark Angels book, so I'll just wave him as my prop. This is actually Legacy of Caliban, but I want a prop to wave, I'll wave this. So I'll do this one first. This is, as you may have guessed, a 40k book, or 30k book in this instance, and it follows the beginnings of the fall of Caliban. We have the Primarch, Lionel Johnson, has been called away as part of the Crusade, and he has left behind him Luther, his father figure and right-hand man, until recently. See Descent of Angels for the rather strained relationship that they now have. So the book is divided into these 2 stories. We've got the Lion, who is on campaign in Dimat, and Luther at home on Caliban. Now, I've always rather liked this legion. I like the knightly vibe they've got and the monastic vibe they've got. They are very much based on the Templars. And while I like the legion and while I tend to stick up for the Lion, I don't have a lot of sympathy for him in this, and I'm not very interested in his story arc, his storyline in this. I have a little bit of sympathy for him because, much like Sir Percival, I'm fairly sure this is what he's based on, he grew up very alone out in the forests and had very little human interaction. And so he's this masterful strategist and warrior, but has real blind spots when it comes to people. And it's interesting that that's actually brought up in the book, that almost like you would see with autism, he doesn't pick up certain social cues that somebody else might find obvious, but this genius completely misses. And I thought that was interesting. That's an interesting way of humanizing a superhuman. So that was fun. But his storyline itself was only okay. The one we're all interested in is Luther's storyline, and I will use this rallying cry and hashtag, Luther did nothing wrong. In other books, oddly enough, this book, Luther is this figure of he's a betrayer because he turned Caliban against the Lion. That's not really a spoiler. It's common Dark Angel knowledge and implied heavily, really, from the start. And like a lot of the Horus Heresy books, this book is challenging that notion of the people we thought of as villains. We have it obviously with Horus, with the reasons for the rebellion. We see it with Magnus. That's where the big Magnus did nothing wrong tag comes from. I've got less sympathy for Fulgrim, but there's certain sympathy for Angron, because yes, he's insane rage monster madman, but it's not by his own doing, and the Emperor did not help the situation. So we've got another example of here's someone you used to think was a bad guy, and you're really seeing his point of view. Because from Luther's point of view, and from a lot of Caliban's point of view, for those who don't know the story, the Emperor, who is going around reuniting humanity, his Primarch sons scattered throughout the galaxy, goes to Caliban, finds the Lion, and says, "Ah, it's you. You're destined to command one of my legions and help me unite the galaxy. My guys are going to come to your planet and train up and genetically enhance your knights and warriors, and they're all going to come on this mighty crusade." And to an extent, that's theoretically a wow, how good story, until you realize, well, Caliban's forests are now being cut down to help the great war machine that is the Imperium. And from the point of view of a lot of the people there, their top man, Lionel Johnson, basically saw an alien spaceman come down and say, I'm taking over your world and I'm taking you with me and your best people to come and fight my war. And instead of sticking up for them, he said, all right, I'll go with you. To them, the lion is the betrayer. He's the one who's betrayed his own people. And he's taken the invader's side. So, yes, a little duplicitous of him, but Luther, he served his people as they would want to be served. Perhaps not wisely, but that is what he was intending to do. There was noble intent behind him. And with the people who then become the fallen. Again, I picked this to wave because it's got a dark angel on the front. But there are the fallen in this who are vilified. And you think, no, they were kind of in the right. So it was a very interesting book from that perspective. Some people don't like the epilogue, because the epilogue involves a Primarch who isn't named until the end. And there's a degree of bathos there, where we've had this grand story, and we're finishing it on a wink to camera. So I can understand some people getting annoyed by that. I didn't mind. I read it and was just thinking, oh, who's it going to be? 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 Ah, it's that guy. So I was amused by it. It worked for me, and bathos sometimes does it, sometimes doesn't. For me, it worked. So Fallen Angels, have a look. A lot of people slate the Dark Angels books, but I like them. Next up, we have, and I'll only show this briefly, Creaduriaid Myrddyn Ddewin. Now, I'll go into this more another time. Well, we mentioned it before as well. My son will be going to a Welsh school. I went to a Welsh school, but my grasp of the language has slipped quite a bit because I haven't practiced it much. So I started reading kids' books, and I've now worked past this up to teen and young adult books in Welsh to get myself back into it. And this was just something I saw in the library, and it's just this glossary of magical creatures, and a bit of fun. Something to do a couple of evenings before going to bed, and just a little bit of practicing of the language, which I really need to get on with, because my boy is nearly 2, and he can start school at 3 if he goes to a Welsh school. So yes, I'm trying to be a ymarfer. Our last one, it's in English, and it's, I say a grown-up's book, it's a young adult's book, and it's Theodore Taylor's The K. And my wife picked this up for me because she had read it when she was younger and said, have a go at this, see what you think. And it's one of those ones where I started off and saw the premise and I thought, it's all right. But I got gripped surprisingly well. A lot of books that I read, I think to myself, I'm not going to like them. And then quality writing and storytelling will drag me in. So this story is about a young Dutch white boy called Philip, who's living in the Caribbean, and a black man named Timothy. And through various horrors of the war coming and the U-boats sinking ships, they find themselves stranded together. And the overall concept of the book is that this young man who's spent some of his life in Virginia has been raised with racial prejudice. And this man, crucially, even after he's stopped being a necessity for survival and become a companion, he breaks down that idea of racial prejudice, not through any conscious effort. Timothy is a very sort of passive is maybe too strong a word, but a very easygoing and non-confrontational man. And he shows through his actions his value, and Philip starts to see that, what was the point of this idea of racial prejudice? It's ludicrous. This man is worth so much. And they start to rely upon each other. which is excellent, and the real friendship is made. I've heard it put, because I've put a review on Goodreads, people saying, oh, what a ridiculously simplistic idea of the fight against racial prejudice. How, what utter nonsense. It has none of the subtlety or nuances of the matter at hand. And no, it isn't subtle. And yes, the dreaded N-word is used near the start, because near the start he has racial prejudice, and as he goes through, he loses it. That's how these things work. He has to be in a bad place at the start to evolve into the good place at the end. And yes, it is a very simplified version of a complex issue. But it's a book written for young people, and it was a book written, 40 years ago? There's worse places to start than with a simple message of, don't be racist, guys. It's bad, and it's stupid. Be nice to each other, because we're all human. I think simplistic message though that is, it's a really good message to start off with. And if you want to go into the greater nuances of racial prejudice, build it from there. But have a nice, simple start. The only sort of really irritating thing about this book is it ends like that. That wasn't a very loud click. Like that. We have, I'm not going to spoil the story, but we have long period of story. Some of it is slow-paced, some of it's quite gripping. I was terrified for Stu the cat. But you've had this very, very long build-up of, oh, what will happen, how will this end? And then we have about 5 pages of, yeah, it ended. That's it. Maybe, maybe I would have been annoyed if they dragged the ending out too long, but a little bit more would have been nice. It would have felt more satisfying as an ending to an otherwise very good book. So yes, minor flaws. I shall hold up them all again, but I'll hide the words Legacy of Caliban and remind you Fallen Angels is the name of this book. Here are the books that I have read of late. Recommend. If you're trying to learn Welsh, recommend. Otherwise, I'm just throwing this up because it was a fun little cover with some fun artwork. Look at that. That's literally on. I shall leave it there. That's my latest reading material, and I shall be back again soon, I'm sure. This is James, aka JP Harker. Farewell.